These games may be small in stature, but they're mighty in gameplay. What's up, all you gamers? It's Santiago here again with a short list but big gameplay. I'm taking a look at 5 of my favorite small box games. These aren't the top 5. I plan on doing a few of these lists. There's so many of these games, and I didn't want to just do a top 10. I think there are so many more that I want to highlight. I've seen this topic come up in forums, on Reddit, BGG, Facebook groups, online on YouTube. People always want to know what recommendations people have for small box games. So I'm going to give you 5 of my favorite, and in the future, more to come. So keep in mind with this list that these aren't in any particular order. What I did want to do with these first 5 is pick 5 games that highlighted different game mechanisms. Also keep in mind, what I was trying to think of with these games are something that can fit on a smaller table. Maybe you don't have a big game room like myself, where I can leave games overnight. Maybe you have just a small coffee table or limited time and space. And even when you're going on trips, I try to keep in mind, those little tables you have, the little desks you have when you go stay at a hotel. So if you're on a business trip or something like that, you're on a family trip, you want to bring a game with you, which is what I normally do, then you can play it on a smaller space. So it won't always fit to that, but I try to keep that in mind as well. So for this first one is a game that really blew me away when I first played it, and it's one of maybe more to follow. The new Lord of the Rings trick-taking game is out there that has a solo mode. I haven't played it yet, we'll see. But the first solo trick-taking game that I have played and absolutely loved is for Northwood. So if you don't know what trick-taking is, I don't want to go into a long explanation, but it's like other regular 52 card games out there. Probably the most famous is Spades, which you usually play in teams, but there's other games. I believe Hearts is another one. You correct me if I'm wrong, YouTube. But basically, what you're trying to do is, in a regular trick-taking game, is winning tricks. So someone will play a card, or in this case, a card will be played from the deck, and that's going to be one of usually 4 suits, and you're going to try to either beat or not beat because you don't have the right cards, or maybe you don't want to beat that number. Usually the highest number wins of the suit that was played. So in this game, instead of playing other people, you're drawing directly from the deck in order to win or lose the tricks. So the theme behind the game is that basically you are someone who's trying to unite the kingdoms. It has this really unassuming, cute art to the game on all of the cards, but don't let that fool you. They could have put any theme on this game, really, and I've seen some really cool rethemes. But basically, you have all of these leaders that you're going to have in front of you. I'm sure I'll do a screenshot here somewhere, or maybe in the main screen. You're going to have these leaders that you're trying to win over, and you're trying to unite these guys all in one banner. You're having conversations with them in the form of these rounds of trick taking. If you get the exact number you need for that leader, you will win them over. You're trying to score a certain number of points. The harder it is to win that number of tricks, the more points you'll get. So, for example, it is harder to win no tricks and all of the tricks. 7 is the most. So those will give you the most points, and then the points will go down all the way to the middle. And you're just playing cards, playing the tricks is really, really neat the way it works. Something that we wouldn't have thought possible, but they really pull it off here. One of the coolest things are the leaders. As you win, so let's say you were supposed to win 4 tricks, you win exactly 4 tricks, you win over that leader. Now that leader becomes someone you can use in other conversations with the other leaders that you're trying to win over. You do start with 4 of the jacks, and they have special abilities. They'll allow you to draw cards or discard cards or manipulate what's going on in some way. And so every time you do win over a leader, that one you can substitute out. You can only have 4 up at a time each round of play, and you can swap them out. So the more you win, more abilities you'll be able to have throughout the game. Additionally, there's even a little kind of expansion, maybe a little campaign mode, but there are a string of scenarios that come in the box as you know, after you've played for a bit and maybe you've beaten it a few times, you've played it. There's a base setup and then there's a random setup. After you've beaten that a couple times, you can step into the scenarios and play those. The card quality is amazing. It's, I don't know what these are made of. They're kind of like plastic. I tried to sleeve them, and there aren't really sleeves made for them exactly that would fit back in the box. Um, but they're really durable. I mean, these things are going to handle shuffling. They're not your regular card stock. So I think they had that in mind when they put this together. So I've got not much more to say about it. Wonderful game. So of all the tiny epic games, which there's a lot at this point, still more coming out. This is one of the earlier ones, one of the ones I backed, and I still think it's the best one that exists. If you've watched my top 10 games of all time, you've seen it on that list. And if you haven't, why haven't you? Go in the link or somewhere, I'll post it. Go watch it. Anyway, this is Tiny Epic Galaxies. In Tiny Epic Galaxies, what you're doing is you're trying to take over planets by gathering resources, sending rockets out to expeditions, moving up these tracks to take over those planets. With each planet that you acquire, it gives you a new ability as well as points towards the end game. 21 points wins the game. That's the normal game. It's also the solo game. In the solo game, there are several bots on the back of every one of the player mats. There's a different level of bot that you're going up against that has different abilities as you play. And it's really, really fun, primarily because how quick the AI is and the action selection system. So, just as in the regular game, the dice that you have dice that you're going to roll. You have a couple rolls and maybe a couple abilities to affect those different dice. Each face of the dice is going to do something different. In the regular game, you can follow an action. So what's really fun about that is that you're constantly engaged. So even when it's not your turn, you're paying attention to other players. In the solo game, the same thing happens. When it's the AI's turn, they're going to roll dice, and you could still spend culture, just like in the regular game, to follow the actions of the AI. So even when the AI is going, you're still paying attention because you still might be able to use that action to do something on your turn. It's absolutely addicting and just takes up not very much space. It is crunchy enough that it hits a sweet spot, man. You can play this. It plays quickly within 30 minutes. The box says, and that's very true. There is an expansion as well that you could get that adds secret missions, that adds uh, different kinds of ships that do different things, and just adds another layer. That is the Beyond the Black expansion. I highly recommend it. I would say even if you're an experienced gamer and you've been thinking about getting the game, go ahead and get the expansion too. It's just going to add more stuff. After your first few plays, you're going to want to get that. I strongly recommend it. So that is Tiny Epic Galaxies. All right, so we've had trick taking, and we've had a game with dice rolling, combo building, resource management type stuff in it. But what about a game for just hacking down monsters, rolling dice, going through a dungeon? And I've got a recommendation in Mini Rogue. Mini Rogue is a rogue-like dungeon crawl game of going into a dungeon, fighting monsters, trying to survive, managing resources here as well, trying to get through the levels of the dungeon to try to make it all the way to the end and beat the final boss. Like other dungeon crawl board games, some of the bigger box ones where you're going to have a bunch of tiles and miniatures and all this kind of stuff. You see how big this box is. It's not very big at all. A Mini Rogue manages to capture the feel of a dungeon crawl, as well as you could imagine. So as you're playing the game, moving through the dungeon is represented by the deck of cards. So you won't always find a monster. You might find other encounters like a secret passage or a trap, a bandit, a library, a damp cave, a merchant. You've got all kinds of stuff that you're going to run into. And this big deck, it gets even bigger if you get an expansion. You're going to move from room to room as you're moving on a grid that you set up with the cards and just trying to survive. You're going to want to fight some monsters here and there to level up your character, to get loot and experience, all that kind of stuff. And it's all represented on this little um, cardboard player board. It's got your armor, food, gold, potions, all that kind of stuff depicted on there. And as you move through, you're going to fight monsters using this board here that's going to have your monsters' hit points and where you are in the dungeon as you move through the levels. So it really does a good job of that. It's really hard, as any game with dice, it can be really swingy and really kick your butt. You might get really lucky some games where you have a pretty easy path. But I do think there's enough choice and there's enough manipulation of the dice and abilities that you have. You have different characters, your typical tropes and characters. There's a wizard and a rogue, a fighter type that you can pick. And again, if there's expansions, they just did a Kickstarter for more content that you can add to the game. But it is very replayable out of the box. And as I've said with the other games, it can fit on a small table. You bust it out; it's pretty quick to set up. Shuffle the different decks, and you're ready to go. But if you want that fix, and you're on a trip, and you want that fix of killing monsters, collecting treasure, leveling up, this has got it all for you. So that's one of my picks. That's Mini Rogue. So this next game is going to fill a couple of categories: the roll and write or flip and write category, the tile placement game category, and the Zen game. This has got another fantasy theme as the last game did. This game is Cartographers. So cartographers is about, just like what it sounds. You're a cartographer creating a map of this fantasy land. You're trying to place tiles on one of your sheets here, to build it in certain ways to fulfill the goals on the cards to score points. So it may not look exactly, you're not going to have everything clumped together or put exactly the way you want, unless you want to do terrible at the game. But what you're doing is, yeah, you're trying to fulfill those goals. There's also different spots on the map that you want to cover up to give you coins, which are points in the game as well. Every now and again, there are going to be some monsters that come out and try to wreck your plans. So if you've got a perfect thing going on, every once in a while you're going to draw one of these monster ambush cards, and they're going to ruin your plans and get thrown onto the map. So in the regular game, that part is done by other players around the table. You're going to pass your board to the paper to the left or the right, and they're going to draw it wherever they want to, where they can fit it to really ruin your plans. They might see what you're doing. In the solo game, they each card is going to have. See if I can get that on camera. Oof, sorry for the glare. There you go. That's a decent enough picture there. So they're going to go in a certain place and rotate in a certain direction. And there's a quick little rule explanation in the game. The first place where they can fit in, and it usually will ruin your plans there on your little map, that's where they're going to be placed. And so that's the game. Really, the one of the most fun things I find in it is the fact that it's a pretty chill game. It moves at a really good clip. It feels just about the same as playing with other people. This is basically a multiplayer solo game. You are not really paying too much attention to what others are doing in the multiplayer game, and in the solo game, you're just chilling. You're filling up your board. I love taking these on planes. There are not a lot of games that can fit on your little table in your plane. Maybe for Northwood, I've had one or two other games I could fit, but this is perfect for that. I remember flying to Hawaii with my wife when we were playing on there. You just need this. You need just a little space to flip over some decks of cards, and then some colored pencils and markers. to make a really neat map, and it's really satisfying at the end of the game when you take a look at what you've created. And I'll show a couple finished boards here as well. It's really neat, and it finishes really quickly. There's nothing in terms of an AI in the game other than those ambush cards, but that's fine. It's still very much like how the regular game plays. The only other change is the scoring at the end of the game. It is kind of a beat your own score, which I typically don't like. So that tells you how much I really like this game. In the back here, depending on how hard the goals were, they're going to have a value that you add up together and subtract from your final score. And then based off of that, you're going to get anything from, you're going to get a title from legendary cartographer all the way to oblivious ink drinker. So you must have done really bad if you've done that. So this is a wonderful game of tile placement and just doodling and having a good time playing Cartographers. So the fifth and final game on this list is another Scott Alms sci-fi space themed game. It's not Tiny Epic Galaxies. It is Warp's Edge. And this is in another series of games, the Solo Hero series. Battlegrounds, I believe, is the other one, and Reckland Run. So in Warp's Edge, you are taking control of a ship, trying to make it through waves of enemy ships, and then eventually destroying the mothership. You are not going to live on your first time through. That is the point of the game. What's really cool about it thematically and mechanically is that you're going through, you're going to die. You're only going to make it so far. And what's going to happen is after losing that and dying, you're going to be able to rewind time, kind of reset some of the stuff of the game, and but you're going to be using the tokens and the cards that you gained from that first run. So imagine like Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise movie. You've got this knowledge now that you're trying to take with you in order to defeat the mothership eventually. You have a certain amount of runs you need to get it done in, just like in the Edge of Tomorrow. They know that you have this information and this power, but now you know what kind of enemies are coming out, and you do know the strengths and weaknesses of the mothership that you're trying to take out. The main mechanism of the game is not deck building. So if you've heard of deck builders, or if you're new to the hobby, this is a bag builder. So what a bag builder is, has the same concept where you're going to start with basic cards, in this case basic tokens. Now I have mine in these cool plastic coin capsules that protect the tokens, but you're going to start with these. You pull out a certain amount, and they're going to give you different things like energy to buy new capsules. You're going to have, your ability to dodge, and, blasters to deal damage. And there are tons of other tokens and things in the game. I'll show you a couple of other things here. So you're going to have a different ship that you pick from with their own personal tokens that you set up with every game. So not only can you purchase some of the basic tokens that'll give you even more energy and your blasters, but you can have different abilities such as gaining shields or being able to deal more damage to a particular kind of enemy. You have ones that'll spray or deal damage to multiple enemies. Some of the tokens you can put back into the bag, all kinds of stuff. The replayability is huge in this game because you have different ships that you can use. You have different motherships that you're going to be going up against. You have the whole deck of cards of the different kinds of enemies that'll be different every game. And then you've got your deck of cards with the different abilities. So highly replayable, and it even comes with this kind of story or mini campaign to the game that you can play through with some kind of choose your own adventure type stuff in it. So they really went all out with this game. There's a lot in this small box. Relatively speaking, it's still a small box. It's the biggest of the games that I've talked about today, but it can still fit, in a luggage, carry on or something, or if you want to throw it into a backpack and bring it with you. So it still fits, the criteria for a small box game. But yeah, so that's Warp's Edge. All right, I want to thank you for watching the video. If you've got some other suggestions for other people who are watching this video, you want to throw them down below, feel free. I'm going to cover more games. This is only 5 of many small box games that I want to tell you about. So For now, that's the video. I appreciate you watching. Go get yourself a new game, and you have a great day.